to this podcast, the Heidelcast.
It's a Heidelminicast, and now, Scott Clark.
Why is the doctrine of Christ as mediator so important?
If the Heidelcast helps you, or you help us keep it going, please make the coffer clink by clicking on the PayPal link or by sending a check to Heidelberg Reformation Association, 1637 East Valley Parkway, number 391, Escondido, California, 92027.
Be sure to download the Heidel app at your earliest convenience from the App Store or Google Play, and subscribe to the Heidel blog at heidelblog.net/subscribe, and subscribe to this here podcast in any decent podcast app.
Call or text now, 760-618-1563.
And let's open up the coffer and see what we have.
You got some letters.
We do. Email, as it happens. This is from Matt, who says, "Hey, Dr. Clark, I'm looking forward to starting seminary at Westminster Seminary, California this year." Well, that's fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing you. Actually, as that'd be true as I'm recording this, but as you're hearing this, as it's gone out, we've already met. So that's the wonders of technology, the time warping. Because just so you know, it is August 26th as I'm standing here in the studio. We've made some equipment changes in here, so I'm adapting. It's working out okay. I hope it's good for you. I hope it's helping you. But I'm used to doing things in a certain order, and I keep hitting the wrong buttons and things. Anyway, not that you'll notice because, you know, we have a marvelous producer, Brian, who fixes all these things. So you never hear the goofy things that I do. It all gets cut and burned electronically, so you'll never hear that stuff. Anyway, looking forward to starting seminary, so it's fantastic. I was wondering if you had any book recommendations that focused on Christ being the mediator between God and man, even under the Old Testament. I have read some of the articles and quotations that you have provided, all great, by the way. But I would like to dig in a little more. The topic has been extremely helpful for me in seeing the one covenant of grace under two administrations and Christ being the substance of all the covenants. All right, well, that's fantastic. And you're doing the right thing and asking the right questions. So let me just whet the listener's appetite, and I'll give you a book recommendation here in a minute. But there's a lot of stuff on the Heidel blog if you want to know more about Christ as mediator. My Baptist friends frequently write, and they want to know, well, for whom was Christ mediating? And I've answered that question. And so you can just Google that or come to, or DuckDuckGo that. I'd rather you not use Google if you ask me, but maybe you don't care. Go to heidelblog.net and use the search function, or you can do a site search. You know how to do that? You type in SITE:heidelblog.net, right? No spaces. Then make a space, and then type in your search terms. And in this case, you type in Christ and then the mediator, those two words, just those two words. SITE:heidelblog.net, make a space, and then type in the words Christ mediator. And then hit go. And then that will search the Heidel blog and bring up everything that we have on Christ and mediator. So I do that all the time. That's the best way to search a lot of sites. And our search function actually works pretty well. But this will actually maybe bring up some stuff that the search function doesn't bring up. Okay, so here's a quotation that I did the exact same thing that I just told you to do. And this is one of the first things that came up. This is from Caspar Olevianus, and we're talking about Caspar Olevianus in our series Comfort of the Covenant. You can hear that at heidelblog.net/comfort. So Olevianus, from his untranslated, as of yet untranslated, I'm working on it, volume De Substantia Foederis Gratuiti Inter Deum et Electos from 1585. It's from part 1, and I think chapter 2, section 1, 1, 2, 1. The English translation will be on the substance of the covenant of grace between God and the elect. And he says, the Son of God, having been constituted by the Father as mediator of the covenant. Let me interrupt here. By the way, this is a question I raised in the series, and so maybe you've heard that by the time you hear this, but maybe you're just coming to the Heidelcast. So let me ask you this question. When was the Son constituted by the Father as mediator of the covenant? If you say it happened in history, I think that's problematic, right? Then you start rooting around in the New Testament for some example of where this happened. And then my next question is, on that way of proceeding, how do you avoid, verging into some sort of adoptionism? So it seems like an ill-advised adventure.
The Heidelcast.
So I don't think you should do it anyway. So the best thing to do, and I think what Olivianus would do and does do in his work, although he doesn't spell it out in great detail, is that he thinks of this as having happened from all eternity, which is how we got to the doctrine of the covenant of redemption, the pactum salutis. The Son of God, having been constituted by the Father as mediator of the covenant, that's the covenant of grace he's talking about, on two counts. One, he shall satisfy for the sins of all those whom the Father has given him, and he cites John 17. So this is classic covenant redemption language, pactum salutis language. And he decreed from eternity to adopt them into sonship wrought in Christ. And he cites Ephesians 1. And then number 2, he says, he shall also bring to pass that they, being planted in him, shall enjoy peace of conscience and be renewed daily in the image of God. So that's Olivianus on the mediatorship of Christ, Christ as mediator, which he ties implicitly here to the covenant of redemption. There's a long passage from Ursinus's body of doctrine, Corpus Doctrinae, which we have as, I think it's translated Commentary on the Heidelberg Catechism, but the Latin title is typically Corpus Doctrinae, body of doctrine. Anyway, he says, let's see where I'm looking for the reference here. This is from the English translation, the Commentary of Dr. Zacharias Ursinus on the Heidelberg Catechism. And this is pages 99 and 100. I won't read all of this because that will make a rather long episode. But the question he's asking here is, in what do the old and new covenant agree, and in what do they differ? And he says, since there is but one covenant, and the scriptures speak of it as though it were two, we must consider in what particulars the old and new covenants agree and in what they differ. They agree, one, in having God as their author and Christ as their mediator. That's significant right there. What did he just say? Christ is mediator in both the old covenant and the new covenant. Why does he say that? Because in Reformed theology, and this is why I keep saying that my particular Baptist friends are not Reformed. They're particular, but they're not Reformed, because they deny the substance of the covenant of grace, mostly, increasingly. And certainly they don't affirm one covenant of grace, multiple administrations. If they did, they would agree with us on infant baptism, because then they would see the continuity between the new covenant and Abraham. I will be a God to you and to your children after you. And which is why Peter says in Acts 2:39, for the promise, what promise? I will be a God to you and to your children after you. The promise is to you and to your children and to those Gentiles out there whom God is going to call and bring into the covenant of grace. Okay, so one covenant of grace, multiple administrations, Christ is mediator in both the types and shadows and in the reality. But Moses, some say, was the mediator of the old covenant. To this we reply that he was mediator only as a type of Christ, who was, listen to this, even then already mediator, but is now the only mediator without any type, for Christ, having come in the flesh, is no longer covered with types. So anyway, that gives you a sense of how Ursinus goes at this, and I'll let you check this out on the Heidel blog. There's a whole bunch of other quotations. There's a nice quotation here from John Owen. I have it entitled, which I think comes from Owen. The new covenant was inaugurated when? After the fall, and Christ was its mediator. When was the new covenant inaugurated for Owen? After the fall, right? Not in what we think of as the new covenant. It was inaugurated after the fall. Why? Because the new covenant for Owen and the covenant of grace are the same thing. And what do we infer from that? Well, we infer from that John Owen was not a Baptist.
Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Clark.
Yes, sirree, Bob. It is I who is saying these outrageous things, but that's because it's true. John Owen was not a Baptist. One other place that we could look at for stuff on the Office of Christ as Mediator, and a really edifying place to go, is Belgic Confession, Article 26. And you say, well, where can I find that? Well, online, you can find it at heidelblog.net/confession, heidelblog.net/confession. In print, you can find it in the liturgical forms and prayers of the United Reformed Churches in North America, together with the doctrinal standards of the URCNA, and you can get that at Great Commission Publications, and it's $8. There's a link to that on the Heidelblog. If you just search for Forms and Prayers is the title that's on the cover. It used to be $4, now it's $8, comes with a ribbon, it's hardbound, very nicely done. I'm very happy with this. And Article 26 of the Belgic Confession, I'll just read a little bit, says, we believe that we have no access to God except through the one and only mediator and intercessor, Jesus Christ the righteous. He therefore was made man, uniting together the divine and human natures so that we human beings might have access to the divine majesty. Otherwise, we would have no access. But this mediator, whom the Father has appointed between himself and us, ought not terrify us by his greatness so that we have to look for another one. For example, the Blessed Virgin or saints, right? That's what we're getting at there. According to our fancy, for neither in heaven nor among the creatures on earth is there anyone who loves us more than Jesus Christ does. Well, anyway, there's a taste. So if you want to know more about Christ as Mediator, look at Belgic Confession, Article 26.
Thanks for listening. Tune in tomorrow for more from the Heidelcast, brought to you by Heidelberg Reformation Association.org. Don't forget, when the coin in the coffer clinks, the cost of bandwidth shrinks. Copyright Heidelberg Reformation Association. All rights reserved. This is a Heidel Media production.
The best podcast, the Heidelcast.